Hello folks, welcome back. In this video, we are going to discuss dropdowns. Okay, so dropdowns, or dropdowns. Well, the thing is, after some research, it's actually dropdowns with the hyphen when you are referring to a UI component. However, you can also say dropdowns like this with the space or dropdowns altogether. Really, my conclusion is whatever floats your boat, whatever makes you happy. Okay, so if a dropdown starts with the select tag name, then it is recommended to use the select class. There's a class in Selenium, okay, that's called select. Selenium select class allows for options to be selected in 3 different ways. Okay, first, it's select by visible text. You have select by index, and then you have select by value. Okay. The thing is that in order for you to use these methods, you need to create an object of the select class. And this is how you would create an object of the select class right here. Okay, select, and then you can give the object reference variable name equals new select, and then you need to pass the locator here as an argument to this constructor of this select class. Okay, now you notice I said if a dropdown starts with select tag name. It's very popular to handle dropdowns that have select tag name, but there are different type of dropdowns, and we'll discuss this probably in this video or in the next couple of videos. Okay. So let's go on to VS Code here. Okay, so I created a new class called dropdowns.java. I do want to say that I'm actually using a Mac for some of these videos. In the previous videos, I was actually using a Windows computer, a Windows PC. Okay, VS Code in most cases will be the same. Nothing should change. Okay, but some of these videos you'll see them recorded on Windows, and some of them you'll see them recorded on Mac. Okay, in most cases, I will be working with the same project that we've been working on in the last videos. The only thing here is that I don't have the code of the class that we created that's called checkboxes. Okay, but that's not an issue. I'll get it later. But for as far as everything else goes, everything else is the same. So I created a class called dropdowns.java. Okay, and I created a main method. Inside the main method, we have code here that we've been using in the last few classes, where we're making a reference to the WebDriver interface and the Chrome driver class. We're maximizing the browser, deleting all cookies, and then here we're navigating to the website that we have been working on in the last couple of videos. Okay, so this code right here, you guys should already have. We've been using this code already. Okay, so one new thing that I'm doing here, okay, that we haven't done before is this. So you know how to inspect an element. So we're using driver.findElement, and I'm using an XPath. And the XPath that I located here is an XPath of this select dropdown on this site. Okay, let me go ahead and show you right here. Okay, I inspected this dropdown right here. Okay, so this is the XPath that I have right here. Okay, now I'm doing something new here though, that I haven't done in the previous videos. Okay, what I'm doing is I'm doing driver.findElement by XPath, but I'm assigning it to a type of web element. Okay, the reason for this is because instead of writing this whole statement or using it later wherever I need to, I just want to assign it to a simple variable like I have right here. Okay, so the thing here is, why am I assigning it to a web element? So if you are familiar with Java, you know that most methods have a return type. The method that I'm using to inspect this locator is called findElement. If I hover over findElement, you see that this method returns a type called web element. Okay, so I went ahead and stored this, declared initialize dropdown, okay, with this statement, but of type web element. However, if you're doing this for the first time, you do have to import the web element interface from the Selenium library. Okay, so your code will probably look like this. I'm going to go ahead and delete this import statement, and then you'll see you'll have an error like this. Just click on web element, click on the bulb, and then import web element from the Selenium library. Okay, just like this. Okay, and then you should be good. Now, the next step, well, the first step when you're handling drop downs to start with select tag name, and that is the case here with this drop down. Okay, let's go ahead and inspect this element here. Okay, I'm inspecting the drop down, and you see that it starts with select tag name. Okay, so whenever we have a drop down that starts with select tag name, then it is recommended to use Selenium select class. You notice I'm saying recommended because there are actually other ways that you can interact with, that you can use to interact with this element, but those are tedious ways and really not worth your time. This is actually the simplest way to handle drop downs that start with select tag name. Okay, so we have to instantiate the select class here. But as an argument to this constructor here, we need to pass the locator, which is this drop down here that holds all of this information here. Okay, this is the locator of that drop down. If you don't pass an argument, you're going to get an error like this. Okay, you actually need to pass that argument, which is the web element. Okay, so okay, let's start with the first option. So there are really three most popular ways to select options using select class. Okay, back to what we discussed in the slides. You can select an option by visible text. Okay, what does this mean? Let me go ahead and uncomment this right here. Okay, so I'm using the object reference variable of the select class that we created, and I'm using a method that comes from the select class that's called select by visible text. Okay, whenever you're using this method, you actually need to enter the exact text of the option that you want to select. Okay, so for example, here I want to select the option that says option 1. Okay, so in this drop down, I have a value called option 1, and I want to select this option here. Okay, that's what I'm doing. Now I'm going to go ahead and run this test, and I'm expecting Selenium to select that option. So let's go ahead and run this test, and let's see what happens. Okay, the browser maximizes, and you see that it worked. Okay, option 1 was selected. All right, so the thing with this method is that whenever you're using it, you actually have to enter the exact text of that option. It needs to be spelled the exact same way. So for example, let's say I spelled this with a lowercase o, like this. Okay, this option actually does not exist because these values start with a uppercase O here. Okay, but let's go ahead and run it and see what happens, just to see. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and run this test, and then the browser maximizes, and nothing happened. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and close this browser. Okay, nothing was selected here. The execution is actually still running. Okay, once it stops, we'll see an exception in the console here. Let me go ahead and okay, there it is. Okay, so what did we get? We got a no such element exception. Cannot locate option with text option 1 because it doesn't exist. Okay, so if you notice here, if you want to use this method, you need to enter the exact text of the option that you want to select, and it'll work. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and change this back to O, and we should be good. Okay, now let me go ahead and comment this out. Let me move over to the next option from the select class. Okay, and that is selecting by index. Okay, so similar to data structures, for example, in array, you know that in programming, the value at the first index starts at index 0. Okay, so if you wanted to select the first option, you would have to enter index 0. So here, what I want to do is I want to select the value at index 2. Okay, and the value at index 2 in this dropdown would be, this is the first one, second one, third one. Okay, so 0, 1, 2. So if I run this test, I want option 2, or I'm expecting option 2 to be selected. Now you see that we have an option here that says select. This actually is an option here of the dropdown. So technically here, while you may think we have 3 options, we actually have 4. The thing is that a user wouldn't really select as a first option. It's just kind of like a placeholder for the user to know that they can select a value from this dropdown. Okay, so if I come here, again, we're expecting the third value to be selected. This is 0, 1, 2. So we want option 2 to be selected, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and run this test, and let's see if this worked as expected. Okay, so the browser maximizes, and there you go. Option 2 was selected, and that's what we were expecting, okay? I do want to mention something. I'm using a Mac. In the previous videos, I was using Windows, so I would just exit the browser and I would have no issues. With Mac, it works a little bit different. When you actually click on the X button on top of a browser or a window, you're not really quitting the actual application. So if I show you my dock here on the bottom, you see that I actually have 3 instances of Chrome browser open. So if this is the case, okay, go ahead and close these, quit these browsers, else they will take up a lot of your RAM memory, okay, for Mac, okay? At least until now, I know that we discussed that we would review how to properly close a browser. It's very simple. I know you probably already looked into it, but I have a really good example to show you the difference between driver.close and driver.quit, okay? So just be patient, we're almost there. Okay, so the next option is to select an option or an option by value. Okay, so let me go ahead and uncomment this here. Okay, and by the way, I like to mention again that these methods, the select by value, select by index, select by visible text, they will all automatically come up when you use the object reference variable. For example, I'm typing here select, and when I enter dot, you'll see all of the methods that you can use from the select class, and we're going to discuss some of these as well in the later videos. Okay, so in this with this option here, I want to select an option by value. Okay, this one is pretty interesting because we're not selecting this value by text. We're also not using index. So what is the value? If I go over to, if I open the developer tools here, okay, and I inspect this dropdown. Okay, when we inspect this dropdown, we see the HTML information of this dropdown here. The thing is that when we expand this select tag name here, we actually get to see the options that this dropdown has. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, we already said that the first option is actually select, but we're not going to select it. So these other values here, you see the attribute value called value. When you want to select an option by value, you actually need to pass the attribute value of the value attribute. Okay, in most cases, in a select dropdown, okay, every single option will have a value attribute and an attribute value. Okay, so in this case, let's go ahead and let's see, what are we selecting? We are selecting option 3. Okay, so option 3, and you notice something, the value is spelled with the lowercase o. Okay, so that's not to confuse you here. The visible text is spelled with an uppercase o, but again, we're using the method that will select an option by the attribute value of the value attribute. Okay, so in this case here, when I run this, I'm expecting option 3 to be selected. So I'm gonna go ahead and run this test, and let's see if it worked as expected. Okay, and there you go, it did. Okay, so let's go back to VS Code. Again, let me go ahead and quit this instance of Chrome right here for now. Okay, so we've already covered how to handle dropdowns that start with select tag name and interacting with those options here. Okay, so again, you have, let's recap everything we just discussed. Okay, so now dropdowns. Okay, if a dropdown starts with select tag name, then it is recommended to use the select class. Now I'm saying if here because not every dropdown will start with the select tag name. In the next video, we'll talk about what to do when the dropdown does not start with select tag name. Okay. However, in most cases, most dropdowns do start with select tag name. It all depends on how the UI has been developed that you're testing. Okay. When you are interacting with a dropdown that starts with select tag name, you really have you need to create an object of the select class, and don't forget to pass the locator as an argument to this constructor here. Okay, and you have three options to interact with those options, or three methods. Okay, one is select by visible text, where you need to pass the exact text of the option that you want to select. Option 2, or method 2, is selecting the option by index. Okay, this method here expects an integer as an argument. Okay, so either 0, 1, 2, 3, or so on. It depends how long the dropdown is. And then select by value as well, where you need to pass the attribute value of the value attribute of that value. Okay, now in most cases, you would just do select by visible text because it's the simplest one. Really, select by index is not so popular. It all depends. You can use it depending on the test case you need to automate. The select by value is actually used a lot when we are performing assertions or verifying that a certain value of a dropdown is displayed. And we'll go ahead and discuss this further once we start with assertions.